Dear colleagues, dear friends, welcome. And for me, it's a great honor to gather you here. Today, we are still under the emotions of the amazing Olympic Games, which were the best showcase of our sport. Incredible venue, top sport, a lot of drama and positive emotions. And I would like to congratulate not only the national federations who won medals. By the way, 16 out of 18 medals were won by the European federations, but also all the national federations who took part and all the people. I also would like to extend my gratitude to the OC of the Games, national federations, which were hosting not only the Olympic Games, but also the European Championships and Longines CF Series in 2024. And now we are looking ahead to the Longines CF Series final in Warsaw. We know our sport is outstanding, but we have to agree that we face more and more challenges regarding the horse welfare, EU law and legislation, equestrian rules and regulations, and etc. It's our common responsibility to make any needed efforts to secure the future of our sport. 16 out of 18 medals, it's a great success for European national federations. But success comes with responsibility to secure the social license to operate of our equestrian sport. Thank you once again for your presence, and I'm sure we will have fruitful meeting, which will bring with some inspiration. I would like to present you our guest today. Welcome to Sabrina Ibanez, the FEI Secretary General. Eva Redman. Eva is European Olympic Committee Deputy Director. Onya Power, FEI Deputy Legal Director. And Ken Ruijsen, Event Director of the FEI Youth Jumping Championships 2024 in Pilbergen, and also the Longines CF Series regional qualification. Before to go to the agenda, I would like to give the floor to Sabrina. Sabrina, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Theodore, and also a big congratulations on you on your appointment as Secretary General of the EEF. As you mentioned, Theodore, we have had the immense privilege and responsibility to be able to showcase equestrian sport in Versailles for the Olympic and also for the Paralympic Games. The sport, as you mentioned as well, has been extraordinary. The stands were full of enthusiastic spectators and the images were spectacular. A big congratulations to Great Britain, Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, and Switzerland on your medals. But I certainly don't have to tell you that regardless of the success, the eyes of the entire world are on us and our community is really under the microscope. The strong public reaction to the video showing Charlotte whipping a horse during a training session shocked and outraged the majority of the public. And even though we immediately opened up an investigation, and even though the rider herself withdrew and apologized from the Olympic Games and was provisionally suspended, confidence in equestrian sport as a whole has really been shaken. And it's only getting worse. Daily, we read articles attacking our sport. Requests are streaming into the IOC asking them to remove all of our disciplines from the Olympic program. And all of us really need to be proactive and uncompromising in our response to public concerns. I do seek your full support because this is now an existential issue. It's not a battle anymore. This is war. And we really need to fight this together in order to win it. Now, following the Equine Ethics Welfare Commission report and your feedback during the sports forum, thanks again for that, we have developed a detailed action plan dedicated to ensuring the welfare of FEI horses. And we hope will inspire initiatives for all horses worldwide. You may, or you may not have seen that ahead of the Games, we also launched an action plan around the theme, Be a Guardian. The term guardian marks a real shift and an important evolution in our discourse on the partnership between the human athlete and the equine athlete. It has been chosen to better represent the role of humans in the care and protection given to horses and to reinforce the responsibility of everyone to ensure their well-being. This change in terminology is not merely symbolic, it signifies a fundamental shift in our approach to equine welfare and respect for dignity of horses. By taking on the role of stewards of horses, we are committed to acknowledging their needs, treating them with respect, compassion, and care, and reinforcing our duty to these beautiful animals we live, work, and compete with. Again, in order to succeed in this important mission, dear Secretary Generals, we need everyone's agreement and participation. None of us should be afraid to question ourselves, FEI included, and to face the difficulties honestly and conscientiously. Only in this way can we regain not only the trust of the public, but also of the community. I really have every confidence that in our collective ability to make the right decisions for our sport in the long term. And I'm convinced that together we can ensure a bright future for equestrianism. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. In EF, you have partner who is dedicated to keep the horse welfare, horse well-being. I think it's our responsibility. And if we want to be Olympic sport, we have to take the challenges and to face them. Thank you once again. Today with us is Eva Redman. As I said, she is the Deputy Director of the European Olympic Committee office in Brussels. EF and the European Olympic Committee established very strong relation in 2024. We had a certain number of in-person meetings, online meetings. We worked together on potential options for funding through European Union, especially Erasmus Plus projects. What is the main role of European Olympic Committee? It is to promote the interest of the equestrian sport and Olympic movement within European Union, including representation, policy development, promotion of the Olympic values, support of major sport events as European Olympic Games. But why the connection between
Jesus.
because we are in a meeting, not in webinar, so I can't ask you to mute when you are not talking, otherwise it will be difficult for the other to hear. Thank you. But why the connection with European Equestrian Federation and European Olympic Committee is important? We know that a few months ago there were European elections, which led to change of the structure of the European Parliament, and this could lead to change of the policies. The European Union developed a work plan for 2021-2024, and the European sport model is a key topic in this plan. The newly elected parliament has to develop a new working plan. And this working plan mandates the European Commission to investigate the impact of closed sport competitions on the organized sport system, taking into account sport unique characteristics and examining the potential challenges faced by the European sport model, organization and federations. By the way, we are planning to have a webinar to discuss the ruling of the Court of Arbitrage of Sport and how this potentially could influence the European sport model. But you will be informed in due time when we are ready with this webinar. Another important topic is animal welfare protection in the European Union. Strategy and law. You know that in 1974, the European Union has established and expanded the scope of legislation in this area and established some of the world's highest animal welfare standards. But some of these standards, they led to problems for the equestrian sport and industry. At the previous European Parliament, there were members, and there again members in the newly elected Parliament, who sent written questions to European Commission. And these questions are, is the Commission aware of the animal welfare problems in the equestrian sport? Is the Commission considering introducing measures to ensure proper animal welfare in the equestrian sport? Is the Commission considering introducing measures in line with the French Parliament consideration? we have to be not only active, but we have to be proactive. Now, I would like to give the floor to Eva to present the topics which are in the agenda. Eva, thank you. Now, the floor is yours. You can share your screen.
Thank you, Theodore, and good afternoon, everyone. Theodore, I see that I cannot share my screen. I am not able to do it.
Now?
Yes, perfect, thank you. Just 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. You see my
But you're-
PowerPoint?
Yes, now we are in full screen.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone, indeed, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present you, well, our office, but also the change of landscape in the EU institutions this year, and our planned activities. So I will just very quickly start to present our office very briefly. Theodore explained already our role. I will just show you our partners. So the European Equestrian Federation is one of around 35 sport organizations. It's a mix of national Olympic committees, European federations, international federations, and a few national federations. And then, of course, the European Olympic Committees, the International Olympic Committees, and the European Paralympic Committee also joined very recently. So this is who we work directly for and who our services go to. Our team is a very small team, as you can see. So I am the deputy director. We have a German director, and then other colleagues are from Italy and Belgium mostly. Okay, so EU political landscape. So this year is very much a year of change because there were elections and there are more changes to come. So I'm going to talk to you about these main EU institutions. So the Commission, the Parliament, and then the Council is also going to be mentioned briefly. I'm not going to go into the details of how the EU works now, but you will receive the slides. And of course, please feel free to ask me any questions that you have. In terms of timeline, this is what we are talking about. So as you can see, we are now just after the July event. So in May, the EU adopted the new work plan for sport that is agreed upon by the ministers. So all the countries came together with the European Commission to decide on the topics that will be on the agenda for the next 4 years. In June, as you know, hopefully most of you voted to elect your representatives to the EU Parliament. And then the first plenary session occurred in July when they named the chairs and presidents of each committees, and the president of the European Parliament was also confirmed. Now we are looking ahead, so that is the black part. The European Commission is going to be renewed as well in the autumn. So it's changing on all levels. When we look into the new European Parliament, we can really observe a very clear shift to the right. So all parties, starting from the EPP to then the ESN, and are now right. So what is the most striking is the new groups that were formed that did not exist in the past, and they are mostly, let's say, Eurosceptical groups that are the Europe of Sovereign Nations that won 25 seats. That is the party of the German Alternative for Germany, AfD. And then the other one is the Patriots for Europe, the PFE, that won 84 seats. And that is the group of Hungary Fidesz party. So we also see, interestingly, that the far left, so the group is called the Left, has won 9 seats. So what we really can clearly observe now is a shift to the right, yes, but also a growth in the extremes in the European Parliament. And this can be concerning because negotiations will very most likely be even tougher than they were already in the previous parliament, when negotiations were very complicated and on several texts, including the text on pesticides, for instance, they were not able to find any compromise. So this is quite concerning for the next parliament as well. And we're expecting difficulties in discussions, but let's see. Very quickly to show you how each country voted. So you can choose your country and see which one brought the most votes to which political groups. And on the right, you can see an interesting figure that 50% of the elected MEPs are completely new, which means that they were not in the parliament before. So they were in civil society. And this is also going to be an interesting challenge probably for them, but also for us, of course. This may also mean that some that you know in your countries at national level may have now joined the European Parliament. So it will be super important now to monitor and to identify MEPs and to start creating relations. I will show you a bit later what we are foreseeing to do at the EOC level. Now, looking into the new parliament working structure. So the European Parliament is divided in 24 parliamentary committees that are basically thematic committees. So it's 24 here in red are the ones that we work the most closely with. So we are talking about the Budget Committee, Budge, the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, the ENVI Committee. Next, more specifically for you, equestrian, the Agriculture and Rural Development, the Agri Committee, and then the one dealing with sports is the Culture and Education Committee, so the CUT Committee. Now looking into the composition of these committees, it's also interesting to see which groups are chairing which committee. And this is what we will really look into very closely when we start our advocacy and lobbying work. So the ones in blue are the chairs of each committee, and then listed are the co-chair of each committee. What is interesting to notice is that there is no one from the new political group, so the Europe of Sovereign Nations and the other one. The reason for that is all traditional parties aligned to make sure that these Eurosceptical groups do not get the chair of the committees. So as you can see, two of them will be chaired by the European Conservative groups, the ECR from Belgium and from the Czech Republic. Interestingly, so in the Budget Committee is a Polish MEP, Janusz Lewandowski. He is a very big sport enthusiast. He was part of the intergroup for sport in the previous mandate, so he will most likely or hopefully be an ally. In the Committee on Culture, Education and Sports, the new chair is a Green MEP, and she is new, so she's not from politics. Originally, she's a teacher. So we will have to see. And interestingly as well is Mr. Strojewski, another Polish MEP, who is a very big sport enthusiast as well, so hopefully also a supporter. In the Committee on the Environment and Public Health, you can see the groups that are represented here. So it's the right, the conservatives, the left, and also the right, and chaired by a socialist MEP. Interestingly, there is no Green MEP at the top of the ENVI committee. So that's an interesting fact. And then finally, the Committee on Agriculture is chaired by a Czech MEP. And you can notice that one co-chair is still missing. They did not manage to find one in the previous meeting, so they will have to do it in the forthcoming. Okay, now that we discussed who are the MEPs, it's interesting, of course, to discuss what the Parliament will do. Why we follow the activities of the parliament is, first of all, because the parliament is in charge of several budgetary matters. So when we talk about EU funding for sport, there is the Erasmus Plus project program, but there's also the pilot project and preparatory actions that is a very good source of funding for sport. And the parliament is responsible to set the priorities for these calls. The Parliament can also launch a special call for funding for major European sporting events. It was the case last year for the European Games and also for the Special Olympics, which brought 1 million euros to the European Games. So it's super important. And finally, and maybe the most important, will be the multi-annual financial framework. This is the budget for the European Union as a whole for 8 years. And this is going to be adopted in 25 or 26 and will be our biggest objective for these years. Then policy-wise, of course, the Parliament is involved in the legislative process at the EU level, and they will have new topics that they will work on, but they also will need to work on the files that were not finalized before the elections. Among these are, of course, everything related to animal transport and the welfare of animals in particular, and especially cats and dogs, where we can imagine that if they start with cats and dogs, then they might extend this scrutiny to horses as well. So our objectives for this year for sport, or for the years to come in this new parliament, will be first to promote the European sport model. As always, it's always one of our main objectives. I will go into that a bit later. The second will be to secure sufficient funding for sport. So first of all, to continue what already exists with the pilot projects, but also to make sure that the share for sport organizations within Erasmus Plus is increased, and also that there is more opportunities for sport in Erasmus Plus, but also in other funding programs, for instance, the ones related to health or to agricultural development, which might be very relevant for equestrian sports. So basically to make sure that there is more funding opportunities for sports organizations. And finally, to mainstream sport, which means that sport should also be considered as an enabler for social aspects, for health aspects, and for culture, and that sport is considered a bit more broadly. So what we are planning to do, our lobbying activities in the upcoming months, the first one is now, we have started now, is to identify the MEPs in the parliament that are sport interested or that could be allies for us. And that's what we are starting now, and hopefully to find a good relation with them and to create a kind of group of friends of the European, of the Olympic movements. This is where you can also help us, and that what you should also do, of course, at the national level is to see the MEPs that were elected in your country, potentially to inform the EEF and even then to inform us, because the more information we can get on which MEPs might be interested or will be impactful, the better our action can be when we start our real advocacy work. And then, of course, we will start meeting with these, and when the time comes, we will start to work with these MEPs on all the dossiers. I will now go into the European Commission, but of course, if you have any questions at any moment, I cannot see you, but please raise your question. Going to the European Commission, there will be other changes. As I said, this is also changing. So this is leaving a lot of uncertainties at the moment, but it's also, of course, a very interesting time for us. What is the EU Commission doing? So it's the institution that is setting all the priorities for the year to come. So every year, the European Commission has a work program, and so that can include new text on environmental affairs, or budget or animal welfare. So this is a very important document that we have to monitor very closely. The European Commission is also going to change, as I said, and so what we already know is that the former president, Ursula von der Leyen from Germany, was re-elected, and now all the other commissioners will change. So now we are in the process where each country has to nominate one man and one woman as their candidates. And following that, the European Parliament and the Commission are going to scrutinize the candidates that the member states have appointed, and finally to approve their nominations. So this is where we are at the moment. What we already know is that the sport commissioner, Mrs. Ivanova, most likely she will not stay. At least she will not be the sport commissioner at the moment. And regarding agriculture, what has been already informally announced is that the new commissioner will be from the European People's Party, the EPP, from the right. That was a demand from the right MEPs following the crisis with farmers this spring, that the EPP was found to be the best representative for farmers, and therefore they would like someone from this political group to represent them in the European Commission. And they will take office in November. So what will be interesting for us and very key is to check what the priorities for this new commission will be. And this is a job for the autumn. As I said, the European Work Plan for Sport was adopted. This will be really our roadmap, and everything that the Commission will do will also be in line with this. So this is a process that was already conducted before May, so we were very much involved in this process to make sure that it fits with the interest of sports organizations as much as possible, and the result was then adopted in May. As a general assessment, we think that our demands were more or less heard. So we asked for more cooperation with sport organizations when developing new policies. And there are many, there are several points in the work plan for sport in this direction. And then all the topics that will be addressed are also very relevant. So to name a few, the European sport model is mentioned. There will be a strategic document on the key features of the European sport model that will be adopted in 2026. Very important. And then topics such as safeguarding in sport, violence in sport, sport integrity and doping, gender equality, health and sustainability are all included in this work plan. So it really follows the current challenges and priorities for sport. Also, something just to conclude on the European Commission is the arrangement for cooperation that we, the European Olympic Committees and the European Commission have signed. So it was on the day of the opening of the Olympic Games last month. And this is a framework agreement that commits the EOC and the EU Commission to work together to promote shared values, but also to make sure that we are discussing very regularly, that we are being heard, and this is giving us another room to promote our interests. I will continue with the EU legislation on animal welfare because, of course, this is one of your key topics, and this is going to be one of your key challenges also to adapt to this new legislation in the upcoming years. So this legislation is a very big package that was announced already a few years ago because I think the currently existing legislation on animal welfare was published more than 20 years ago. And so a few years ago, it came in the farm to fork strategy that this should be renewed. So the legislation is supposed to be composed of 4 different texts. The first one is on the protection of animals during transport. This was already published. Then there are 3 others that are not yet published, and they're very late, and a lot of stakeholders are very angry to the European Commission about this. This is the directive on animals kept for farming purposes, and the third one is on minimum standards for the protection of hens, broilers, pigs, and calves. The final one concerns animals at the time of killing. And additionally, there was also a regulation on the welfare of cats and dogs and the traceability, and finally on animal welfare labeling. Now I will give you a bit more details about the regulation animal transport. But just to say that these 4 texts, they were even not in the work priorities of the Commission in 2024. So this year, most likely nothing is going to move forward, but hopefully, or most likely, it will come back in 2025. When it comes to the regulation on animals during transport and related operations, so this is a text that is conducted by DG Sante, most likely, so the Directorate General on Health and Food Safety. There is quite a big blockade in this process now. So it's this text that is it was published in December 2023, so a few months ago, by the European Commission, and it proposes higher standards of protection for animals transported within the EU, but also imported from and exported to third countries. It sets a maximum journey time. It increases the necessary space in vehicles. It also gives stricter rules for transport at high and low temperatures, and also provides provisions on digitalization for the enforcement of the welfare indicators. At this moment, so the legislative process started in December 2023 with the European Commission, and now it is blocked, let's say, in the Council of the European Union. So this is where the ministers of all countries are meeting. They are not able to find a compromise on their position on this text because some countries are requesting more stringent measures, so they would like more restrictions, whereas others think that this proposal is not realistic, that is imposing too many measures that are not fit for their country, and therefore they are not able to find a compromise. The European Food Safety Agency was also mandated to give scientific backing and consideration of the national background, because of course the rules regarding temperatures cannot be exactly the same in Finland and in Portugal, because the context is just very different. So we are still awaiting their advice. So there are scientific experts that are mandated by the European Commission. And in the European Parliament, it has also not moved a lot. So it really remains to be seen now what the new European Parliament will do with the new political balances, and also what the Council will find as a compromise. I'm aware that I suppose a lot of you were already aware of this legislation. At least I know that the French Federation is following this topic very closely. So, of course, please do not hesitate to complete what I'm saying. Here is an example or an overview of the actors or the stakeholders that we will need to follow very closely next year. So, of course, in the Parliament, that is the Committee on Agriculture, the Committee on Environment and Public Health, but also the Intergroup on the Welfare and Conservation of Animals. This is an intergroup, so it's MEPs that gather voluntarily to work on the topic of welfare of animals. And they have been very, very active and very, very vocal. So these activities also need to be followed very closely to see where they stand, what their positions are, and potentially to speak with them and to influence their position. There are other actors that are relevant in this process. So as I said, the European Food Safety Authority, which is from the European Commission, and then DG Sante's Health and Food Audits and Analysis Directorate. Another one is the EU Platform on Animal Welfare. So this is made basically of member states and public institutions, including the World Bank, UN agencies, etc. And they have been following this topic very closely and advising the European institutions on the process. So this is, I think, one of the hottest topics for equestrian. Of course, this year there are other ones that might pop up on the agenda. For instance, the regulation on the use of pesticides, which was cancelled, or the procedure did not go through with previous mandate, but it might come back in this one, and is of course very relevant for equestrian as well. Directives on the use of water can also be relevant and could come back again on the agenda. And then in general, of course, everything related to budget and to farming as well, and agricultural activities. So these are more general topic. And to finish with, I would like to tell you a few words about the European sport model and why it's threatened at the moment, and why it's very important to make sure that this is safeguarded in the upcoming years. So I would suppose that most of you know what I'm talking about when I say European sport model, but if not, I will do a little reminder of what it is. So this is the model under which sports and sport organizations are governed in Europe. So in opposition to how it is governed in the US, for instance, or in other continents. The key characteristics of our European sport model is this functioning into a pyramid model. So with the international governing bodies at the top, and then continental, national, and then local level, with this financial solidarity, so revenues from the top trickle down to the bottom, that we are also sport in Europe very much based on volunteers and the engagement of all these volunteers. Another very, very important principle that was a bit challenged now with the European Super League project is the principle of sporting merit and promotion and relegation. So that there are leagues, and when you win, you go up, then when you lose, you go down, and this makes the whole sport as exciting and interesting as it is in Europe. And then finally, the autonomy and the independence of sport organizations, adhering to good governance principles, of course. It is very much challenged, this model, as you may know, by, for instance, the commercialization of sport, but also the number of new actors that are trying to, for instance, create new competitions, or just, that are being active outside of the traditional organization of sport in Europe. On the left, you can see a study that was done by the European Commission on the main characteristic of the European sport model, but also why it's being challenged and how it could evolve in the future. And at the bottom is it's an example or an extract from the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, very important article 165. That is basically not mentioning the European sport model, but it does mention the special characteristics and the specificity of sport. That is, for instance, openness in sporting competitions and cooperation between bodies responsible for sport, and also speaking about the social value of sport. Where we stay at the moment, so in general, EU institutions have been very supportive about the European sport model and its protection. So this is very positive, and we will try to make sure that this continues this way, that EU institutions continue to be on our side. So there was a report adopted in 2021 that is really recognizing the importance of the European sport model and safeguarding, and also calling for organizations to work together and to continue to protect this model. The countries, the member states, have also been very supportive. In February 2024, they published another declaration to protect and strengthen a solidarity and values-based sport in line of the considered resolution on the key features on the European sport model. So this is from member states, and also from member states it was the EU Work Plan for Sport that is going to set the roadmap for sport in the upcoming months. However, despite the support of EU institutions in soft law, so all these resolutions and the Parliament report, they are soft law, which means that they are not legislatively binding. And there is no formal recognition of the model now in the treaties, but also not in the judgment that was given by the European Court of Justice in December 2023 regarding the European Super League case. So that basically means that sporting bodies are always subject to EU competition law, if not when it's not purely related to the social aspect of sport. And also that references to the European sport model or social benefits of sport. Sorry, there is an echo. Yeah, that this is not sufficient to constitute an exemption from the application of the articles on competition law that are articles 101 and 102 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the EU. And finally, and maybe more interestingly, is that the ruling on the European Court of Justice on the European Super League does not permit the recognition of the European sport model in the interpretation of Article 165. So this is why there is no complete certainty and complete safeguard of the European sport model at this stage. But I will not go into more details when it comes to the European Super League, because I know it will be the topic of another webinar later on. So with this, I would like to conclude my intervention. I think Theodore will open the floor for questions, but of course you can always reach out to me or to my colleagues and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or on our website. And I hope this has been instructive for you and that you at least learned something on this 15th of August. Thank you.
Eva, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for reading all these, let's say, not exciting documents. And I know that because CF is part of your partners, now you have to read much more, especially for the animal legislation. I would like to inform our members, the European federations, that we work very close with EOC from 1st of we are in the process of appointing of sport development manager, and the sport development manager will be in close relation with EOC regarding the funding. I would like to ask if our members, they have some questions to you. Yeah, Quentin.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Eva, for this very interesting summary. Of course, it's a bit far from where we were involved few weeks ago in the top 4 Olympics, but it's good that it's bringing back us on where we have to work. And like you said, there are several challenges. They are not necessarily on short-term perspective, so too many times we certainly are not focusing on them, but definitely there are some very risky ones for the future. It's also linked with what said Sabrina at the beginning. So I would just it's more common, but just encourage all of us to be very connected to this. And I think one of the topic you raised on identification from the MEPs, having some, let's say, sport connections, and several of them have a horse connection. That's a job that we have to, let's say, coordinate at the EF level. But that's need to be done at national level, because nobody knows better let's say, the political landscape from different countries than the national federation. So that's something on the plate from Theodore and the next sport development manager to try to push and help the national federation to identify some good connection, because we have to get the stronger arguments, of course, but also to find the best ways to promote them. And that's going through this identification of political support at national level. And on the rest, I think on the European sport model and this pyramidal system, and I think in several countries there are some trends of organizers going out of the federal scale because they maybe don't see the real interest to be in. So that's our job as national federation to change their mind, of course. But that's there are certainly some regulatory levers that we can let's say better use in also for equestrian activities. So I know that in the UK there have been some, let's say, trends in the past. I don't know if it's still the case, but from this brainstorming on these important matters, we can certainly also learn from experiences in the different countries.
Yeah. Thank you, Quentin. For me, it was clear that part of the statement was done as second TF vice president. So, yes, I think the lobbying is very important to find the right people who can help us. It's very important. It is a responsibility of the EF and the national federations. Eva, do you have some good examples of this cooperation and with other continental or national federations?
Yeah, I would say from what we see, our partners, it's some of them have no capacity, or they don't really have any contacts with MEPs, or they do it through us. But there are other ones that are very, very active directly. When you ask me this question, I directly think about football. So UEFA is very, very active at the European Parliament level, but also in some national federations, again in football, probably because there is more financial means and then human resources, but they have been able in the past to create a lot of alliances and to really change how legislations were going. I think, for instance, in terms of media rights, in the past few years, there were a lot of discussions on the rights related to media, and also on online illegal streams of sport content. These are files where sport, and especially football, but also tennis federations were quite active. So this is the biggest example I have in mind.
Thank you very much. And if there are no other questions, thank you for your time. I know that you have another meeting. Thank you for being with us, and we stay in contact.
Good day, Theodore. Good day, equestrian community of Europe. My name is Ksenia Martinova, and I'm the Secretary General of the Equestrian Federation of Ukraine. And I really do have one question concerning the transportation of horses. As you all know, that we are the country that finds itself in a state of war, and we have issues with transporting the animals to the competitions in Europe, and we stand 20 to 28 hours on the border together with our forces, no matter what the temperature is. So the question is that we have to solve this for the welfare of the horses, firstly. Could we figure something out with that?
Yeah, so the problem on your side is, so you were stuck at the border of the European Union, is that correct?
At both sides, exporting from Ukraine and importing to Ukraine.
Yeah.
We always have issues at the borders with the European Union.
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, there are provisions in this new regulation that are concerning the import and the export and transport of horses in and out of the European Union. We would need to check what exactly these new provisions would be. And then if that requires to be changed, then we have to see with Theodore and the EEF how to what to suggest to MEPs, that they could suggest amendments that it goes more into your sense, and indeed they solve this really crazy situation.
Yeah, just to clarify, this counts only on traveling to tournaments and from tournaments, not selling the horses.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. So this is a very important issue because this is the welfare. This is what we come from.
This is an issue not only with Ukraine, but this is generally a problem when you cross the border with third countries. Next weeks, there will be Balkan Championships in Istanbul, and I know that this is also an issue, and I have been Secretary General of Bulgarian Federation. Believe me, we are working on this. In the last months of the European Parliament, there was a huge discussion about transport of the horses. We had meeting in the European Parliament. What is important is the horses, the sport horses, to be recognized as high performance horses and to have different regulations. Otherwise, with the current regulations, this is not possible. Otherwise, it's horrible, the horses to stay not only 24, but sometimes 48 hours in the border. This is very important issue. This issue was addressed to the newly appointed veterinary committee. Tashkan Yozdemir is a vet from Turkey who was working a lot in these topics, including not only in Turkey, but also with Albania, with North Macedonia, and so on. This is really in our agenda, but it's a very serious issue, I have to agree. Okay, thank you very much, Eva, once again, and see you soon.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Goodbye.
Yeah. So we can go to the next item of our agenda. Nominate entries. Article 116 from the general regulations of FEI, it regulates what are the nominate entries and what are the definite entries for championships. We have to agree that probably there is no one national federation in Europe who didn't have problems during the years with nominate entries. This year we also had we had a case, although the rules are very clear. I would like to open a discussion why we need nominate entries. And is it possible to adopt the rules, the regulations for nominate entries to reduce the chance to have mistakes and to have problems, because the problems, they come from different sides. Sometimes the national federation who forget to enter a horse or rider, sometimes the coach, but at the end, it's a headache for everyone. In my opinion, the nominate entries, they have two aspects which are important. The first is for the OC to have information, maximum how many horses will have at the event, and eventually the deadline for achieving MER when this is needed. For example, for children, we don't need MER. But now I would like to give the floor to One Power to present the FEI position on this topic, and later to see what the organizers think about the nominate entries.
Thank you, Taylor. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you again. Yeah, so nominated entries, honestly, the two words, they make my heart jump, because usually when I get an email with the title nominated entries in the subject line, something has gone wrong along the way and somebody has missed a deadline and somebody is asking the FEI to make an exception. I have to say, first of all, we have a lot of European championships every summer. I think just counting up roughly this summer of 2024, we have about 17 different nominated or different championships. And the vast majority of cases, we have no problem with nominated entries. But every now and again, one or two federations can miss a deadline, human error. Somebody was on holidays when the deadline was happening, or somebody received a notification too late from an athlete that they wanted to enter this and the deadline is missed. And then we usually have quite a traumatic situation for everybody, for the National Federation, for the athletes who often, unfortunately, are young athletes, and then for the FEI. From the FEI's position, and any of you who've had these issues in the past, you will know what the FEI's position is that the deadline is the deadline, and that the rule is quite clear, and we have applied it strictly. And I understand why it often feels at the time that we're being too strict and too bureaucratic. The issue is on our side, if we allow something in after the deadline for nominated entries, we're basically opening the door to accept exceptions for many other types of deadlines, be they Olympic, MER deadlines, definite entries deadlines, etc. So from our side, from the FEI's perspective, we're totally open to hearing proposals, suggestions about reforming the concept of nominated entries, etc. We're absolutely fine to discuss that, etc. In the meantime, until there's a new proposal on the table or a new rule change, our position will still be that the deadline is the deadline. We will, on our side, and we'll make sure that this is applied across all our disciplines, do our very best to make sure that reminders are sent out, which they are, I think, in the vast majority of cases, to help you to remember the deadlines. And as I say, we're here, we're open to listening, and we truly hope that we can avoid future cases of deadlines being missed. I think from our point of view, the concept of nominated entries is more or less as Theodore outlined. From our feedback informally from organizers, they are helpful in helping them plan and prepare for the championship, but maybe there's another way of doing that. And then there is an element of checking, having enough, making sure we have enough time to check MERs, because nobody wants an athlete to show up at a venue on Wednesday or Thursday for a horse inspection for a championship and then only to discover later that in fact they didn't have the MER, etc. So to find a balance between those 2 points, we're open to other suggestions on that. Thank you, Theodore.
Thank you very much, Onya. Now I would like to give the floor to Ken Ruijsen, and we had a meeting with Ken a few days after the European Championships. Ken, what is your opinion about the nominated entries? How you use the nominated entries? Because the youth jumping championships, probably this is the biggest championship.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Theodore. Yeah, we spoke about that briefly there. From an OC's point of view, the deadline of 4 weeks prior to the event is too late anyway to receive very clear information about how many athletes and horses will compete in case of amounts of stabling, of course, etc. So we are, as an OC, of course, looking into the information we can find about the same type of events hosted the years before to clearly understand which impact on our organization this event can have. However, it definitely helps an OC to receive a clear maximum number of competitors and horses at the venue prior to an event. 4 days up front will be very late. But I can understand that changing the regulations can also bring a positive benefit to the workload of various national federations and the FEI. As I could hear from Ms. Power, that there are so many championships going on a short-term period and only a few months this summer. So to wrap it up, for us, the nominated entries was not really giving us the information 4 weeks prior to the event we were waiting for. We really needed. And there was, of course, still a different, I think, of 50-60 horses difference within the nominated entries and the definite entries by the end of the championships, which is, on an amount of 300 horses, a big difference.
Thank you, Ken. During the meeting, you also mentioned that there were a lot of non-competing horses. There were horses who asked for double boxes and so on, which also make your planning a little bit more difficult.
Exactly. So we had around 300 horses competing during the European Championships for the children, juniors, and young riders. But we host a maximum capacity of 560 stables here at the venue, and they were on 30, and in the end we had 30 empty stalls. So for the 300 competing horses, we had we needed in the end 530 stalls for extra non-competing horses tech boxes, treating boxes for the national veterinarians, and double stalls. We had a high amount of double stalls, of 56 double stalls, which is a high percentages of competing horses. So there is also late information receiving us, because the deadline there was before the definite entries, to give us this information from the riders. Yeah.
Thank you. In the chat of the meeting, I put one link with survey, very short survey with 3 very short questions. I would like to give the floor now to the national federations to hear their opinion. Meanwhile, all the participants can fulfill the survey to see if there is a willingness to come with proposal for changes of the rules, regulations for nominate entries.
Can you hear me, Theodore?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Iris.
because I can't seem to get my video and audio correct, so I don't think you see me yet.
No, we don't see you, but we hear you very well.
No, I can't put it on anymore, so I'm sorry about that. Obviously, it will be no surprise that we will be in favor of skipping the nominated entry. I do understand from an MER point of view that the definite entry will be a bit more forward before the date of an event. I think I speak for a lot of federations, also for us. The FEI has all these championships, but yeah, we have the same. It's always also if you have all the disciplines and all the youth categories, then it's always a busy time. And I would be in favor. I can't think of a reason for a national federation to keep the nominated entry. So I would be in favor to skip that part.
Thank you, Iris. Andrea from the Italian Federation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Because I have
Yes,
some
Andrea,
problems
we
as
hear
well.
you.
Okay, fine. So I agree with what Iris is saying, but I personally would keep the nominated entry date because I think it's important for the OC. It's important also from a communications point of view to know who's competing. What is very important are the numbers, as Ken says, to know the numbers of the competitors. So I think that's really important. And for many World Equestrian Games, the past games, we used to have to say how many, what would be the definite number. So maybe you don't have the definite names, but you have the definite numbers. I think we should keep the nominated entries, but I think there should be some kind of leeway. So I think we should be more relaxed if a federation or a trainer hasn't given a combination, because it really is the poor office person who maybe made a mistake or missed a deadline. I think it's terrible for them and also for the youth. I mean, I don't think it's what we're looking for. I think if we can try and help the youngsters and benefit the athletes, because it's not their fault, it's an office mistake or a trainer's mistake. So I really think we should try and benefit that. So maybe having the nominated entries and then saying, okay, by a week before the definite entry, we won't accept any more changes. But I think we have to find some kind of compromise.
Thank you, Andrea. Zonke?
It's pretty much the same direction. Yes, the OC needs a number. They need to know long enough in advance. Team Great Britain will send 4 riders, but that's what they need. They don't need to know the names of those 4 riders. So that's why I think we do not need nominate entries specifically, but we have to provide the OC with a clear and specified number of participants. And then the entries should be as close to the date as possible. And if there is a challenge with MERs, then it should be our responsibility as national federation to sort it out and help FEI to avoid any problems on site.
Thank you, Zonke. I remind you in the chat, there is a link with the short survey. Please fill it. I see that only 6 federations will fill it so far. And we have
Could you
over
also
30
send it by email, because I'm in this meeting on my phone and I can't see
Okay.
the chat function.
We will send it after the meeting by email, so you will be able to fulfill it. Because Secretary General's meeting is no decision-making body, my proposal is EF to discuss with the European federations how to amend the regulations for nominated entries and to come with proposal. Which proposal maybe it will be good first to be discussed with FEI and then to put it forward, not to have the discussion after the first draft next year. Obviously, the rules for 2025, they will be in place, but in future, I think we can modify this rule. Could you agree with this approach? Yeah. Good. One and Ken, thank you very much for your participation. Another topic for discussion is the CSO requirements. You know that the European Equestrian Federation is organizing Longines CF series, which is very successful event, very well accepted from all parties except the organizers. We face some challenges. Many organizers, they ask why I have to organize CSIO 3 stars and to lose money when I can organize CSI 3 stars. The Nations Cup events are very important. I think everybody will agree with this because we are in the individual sport. Nations Cup are the only team competitions which we have. They are very important for the development of the horses, for the athletes, but we have to find the balance between the interest of the organizers and the riders. As you know, the International Jumping Riders Club is discussing the maximum entry fees, not only for entry fees, but also for other expenses, because the expenses of the riders, they are really increasing. But here we have organizers of Nations Cup. I see at least 3, so I would like to hear their opinion. Ken, Dorothy is here. I also see Kaya from Poland. Maybe there are some others. There is a lot of burden on the shoulders of the organizers, especially with the hotel. And this, in my opinion, we have to discuss it, to come with maybe one round table with the organizers, with athletes, and to see how we can make the organization of the Nations Cup events possible for the organizers. What is your opinion on this topic?
Thank you, Theodor, again for the invite actually to be here. And I would like also really important to mention first of all that we are very thankful to both the FEI and the EF for the appointments we got to host the FEI Jumping European Championships here last month, and for the Longines EF series to host a regional qualifier now for 3 years. We received many positive feedback on both events, and we would like to thank all the NFs who sent us their congratulations for those events. Yeah, besides the pressure on our industry regarding horse welfare, we clearly notice that year after year it becomes more difficult to balance budgets for our events. We understand that rising costs have an impact on all stakeholders in our industry. However, we should not forget that equestrian events not only serve the sporting purpose, but also serve the commercial interests of many participants in the field of training with their customers and students here, or as well provide a hub for the trade of their horses. In addition, equestrian events often depend on a small group of the same sponsors. There is therefore a weakness as the pool is very small, but as well in attracting new sponsors due to the current pressure on equestrian sports. And the magnifying glass, as Mrs. Ibanez already mentioned, is indeed a related challenge for us as organizers there as well. So we are very thankful for the EF with the support they give us for this series. And as we spoke about it, Theodore, some costs are with the history of organization with the organizer to cover costs for hotels, for catering, for grooms and riders. And I think it is a very good idea to start a discussion about this topic if these costs are really related for the future to the organizer to be sustainable, to keep on hosting and organizing these events.
Thank you, Ken. Other opinion on this topic?
Well,
Hi, Dorothy.
yeah, hi everybody. As the organizer of a semi-final, which is even more difficult than the regional finals due to the number of teams, which is limited in 10. So this is, of course, during the summer in a downtown of the city like our venue is. It's really expensive, and there's another case. I think also the catering, as my colleague from Holland said, that but the riders never satisfied with, and they also go wherever they find some good food and good restaurants, and they usually don't eat on the venue, but you have to be well prepared that those close to 200 people will have the lunch and dinner. That's another case. I don't know how much the European the rule of the Surrey can be a little bit divided from the FEI rules, because there is also there are some specifics which is already has a difference between this. So if it can be separate and we can have our own regulation for the EF Surrey, that's another case. But if it's should be nearly the same as the FEI rules, then I think it's a long discussion, which was on the table a few years ago already, but then nobody agreed on then if the hotel needs to be paid or not. So I think the main question is then it can be a separate rule for the EF Surrey, or it should be follow the rule of the Nations Cups of the FEI, the LASH.
Actually, I had meetings with representatives of organizing committees of four-star Nations Cup. They also are of opinion that this is a huge amount of money which they pay for the hotels. And this is outside Europe, by the way, so it's not in Europe. My opinion in that LES rules, they have to be very much in line with the FEI rules. And this is what we try to do. Otherwise, it becomes really complicated. That's why we have to have a discussion with FEI, with other stakeholders, and to see how to balance the interest, because the most important is to have shows. Without shows, it will be impossible to have good sport. I don't know if someone else would like to add something. Not at the moment. So,
Theodore, another topic we discussed, for example, is the amount of teams. Of course, like my colleague who organized the semi-final already addressed, there is a fixed amount of teams which directly invited, so there is no room to invite other countries willing to compete. But on the other hand, the limited of riders is also limited for a regional qualifier up to 90, and it should not harm all the competing riders to invite more riders competing up to medium tour or small tour, so not for launching ranking competitions, not for qualification for Grand Prix, to fill up these competitions more, to have more income in entry fees for an OC. That is also something which could be very helpful for us as an OC in this specific event.
Yeah, this is part of the Longens EF series rules. This is in our agenda for the board meeting next week. And as we promised during the EF meeting in Mexico last year, These rules they will put for vote during the GA in September, but yes, this is in our agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's make a conclusion. We will continue with the discussions and to see how we can implement these amendments in the LES rules, or to make a proposal to change the requirements, the CSAO requirements for the organizers, and this will be done in cooperation with FEI.
Theodore, just one sentence to add. As you said at the beginning, I think a roundtable between the organizer, it's a very good organizer, it's a very good idea, either in person, like you said, in Warsaw, or just to share it with Zoom access, then some others can also join it. But I think we have a common interest, and I think it's something would be really fruitful.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorothy. Another item from our agenda are the rules and regulations, comments on the first draft. So far, we didn't receive any comments on this, and maybe you saw that many of the proposals were postponed for the full revision process, which will be after the Olympic Games next year. I don't see some important topics which are for discussion, but if you have some items which you would like to discuss, please, the floor is yours. No? Update on the programs for education of national officials. You know that this year, EEF, with the support of the FEI Solidarity, started 2 programs for education of national dressage judges and national judges and technical delegates in eventing. We received from national federations 232 applications, which was number which was pleasant to surprise. After the online education and after few exams which were run on the platform of Black Horse One, practically the participants, they judge a test. We selected 39 people who were invited and who will take part. They confirmed that they will take part in in-person course, which will be held next week in Bulgaria. It looks that the program is a huge success, and our plans for future are to continue with similar programs for education of course designers. For your information, we already had discussions with Luis Koenigs, with Stefan Wirth, and then the other program will be for education of endurance course designers. Endurance course designers, this is not official function, but it's a very important position, which it's important the person to be educated, and this is important not only for the person who is designing the track, but also for the riders. They have to be informed and they have to be knowledgeable how the course design influence their riding during the track. This is in our plans for next year. We will keep you informed. We will follow the same procedure. The national federations sent application, and it's up to the national federations to certify or not the participants. They will receive the results from the exams as we did for the dressage. If you have some comments on this item. No, thank you. And we are coming to the last item, any other business. As far as I know, so far there was one question which was raised. Amichai Alperovich from Israel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Theodore. Thank you very much, everybody. Ken, now it's also a pleasure to thank you for hosting the European Championship in July. It was amazing to attend. I have very specific question about the jumping format in the next Olympic Games in Los Angeles. is it possible to discuss it, or is it closed? And what we had in Paris will continue copy paste to LA, or can we discuss here in the EAF, or the EAF with the FEI, and then with the IOC about modifying some things in this format? That's my question.
Maybe this is a question to FEI at the moment.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I think there is room for discussion. I believe that during the games itself, there was a lot of conversation about several of the disciplines, how we could further improve. So there will be, I know that the some national federations have some ideas to improve, for example, the jumping format, maintaining the no drop score, but improving it somewhat. I think we did notice now really at these games that not having a drop score really helped us in gaining mainstream spectators' interest in our sport. I mean, I think now it has proven that it works. It's exciting. You don't know until the very end what's going to happen, and we need that. But as I mentioned, there is always room for improvement, and I would suggest that if national federations have thoughts for further improving the format, to send these over to the jumping committee, which will be happy to look at them. But let's be frank amongst ourselves. The 3 and the reserve, the no drop score, that is probably going to remain. It will remain because it works. Again, it's good for television spectators. It's good for mainstream media. And again, we have more participations, more flags than if we didn't. So I think that's won't change. But for the rest, open to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
If I may.
Thanks, Sabrina. We saw that there is a proposal for different format of the eventing Olympic Games.
Absolutely, absolutely. You will have seen that eventing, which, as you know, is the IOC basically asked us to review that format, and there was an FEI update that provided more information as to the way forward. The eventing community seems to be very keen on changing it as well, which would mean that it would be medals for the team after the cross country. It's still not finalized, so that one is still open we'll have to, further review is going to be taking place on eventually specifically. But yeah. And I believe that after also the games in Paris, they will also be looking at the penalties that need to perhaps be given to riders when you put in the reserves, like we saw with Japan. I mean, there was thoughts about that as well. So room for improvement already with the current format, but also, as I mentioned before, they want to change the format because it really is an IOC request from OBS to make it more exciting, and so people that there could be a medal after the cross country, but only for teams.
Practically, in eventing, the team competition will be in short format, and the jumping will be in long format.
More or less. Yeah. It's more or less in that direction. Yeah. Exactly. Good. So I see Nicholas had some question maybe.
No, it's just very quickly. I'm quite new in those type of meetings, as I was a rider myself a long time ago, and now Thomas Batliner, the president of the Federation of Liechtenstein, asked me to be a bit more implicated in everything. I was in the Olympics, as I have a horse in the French team, and my daughter is also riding, as you might know. I have to admit that I was not so a great fan after Tokyo of this drop score, but I think it's in fact great now that we don't have one, because honestly, if I can speak frankly, there were some people preparing so much the horses that somehow when you know that you don't have a drop score anymore, perhaps you do it a little bit less. So that's even good for the welfare of the horses, if I can speak frankly. And I must say it's also incredibly easy to understand for a lot of people. Now it's just, as I'm from a small country, I have to say that for the individual rider to ride after the team is tough. it's so in Tokyo it was the reverse. I don't know why it was changed. I was not in these type of discussions, but that's mainly what I saw. And that's it. And there is perhaps one rule, but we are not here to discuss that today, is about who owns the horse on the 15th of January, because this rule is not really on the sports side. If you see, when Bettendorf was not able to qualify, then the rider who was able to ride was the force after him because of this rule. So I think on the sports side, there was at least 2 or 3 riders. I was happy for the Lithuanian or Letonian guy to be there, but he didn't jump the number 2. So on the sports side, there are a few little things like that. But mainly, I have to say, the thrill to look at the jumping and also ringing this poor young lady before it was going to go too far. That was in my mind and in much better than what happened in Tokyo. With the Irish horse, if you remember. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to say, and I really agree with you that this no drop score is in German we say spannend. It's and it's very easy to understand.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, well, just to go back to what you said, yeah, there was discussions also in Paris about maybe going back to, as you mentioned, not having the individual after the team. So again, there's ways we can make it better. So for sure. And then for the ownership of the horses, I'll let Anya explain why we put that rule in place, and maybe there's ways to further improve it as well, but there is a real need for it as well. Anya?
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. And maybe just as a general outline of what the process will look like for the approval of the rules, etc., for the LA cycle. So in 2025, we will open the consultation on the qualification systems. So, they're the documents that set out, this is how the quota is allocated, etc., where the quota is earned. That will go forward for approval at the GA 2025. And then in 2026, and this is the usual pattern, we do the Olympic regulations, which is all the kind of procedures in and around the competitions, the actual technical rules of the competitions, like that. So the rule that you mentioned, Nicholas, the famous 15th of January rule, is part of those Olympic regulations. Last time, because we had issues with the Tokyo cycle, for the Paris cycle, we really specifically asked the federations, do you want to keep this rule or not? Because from FEI's perspective, we're fine to throw out the rule because it usually causes more tears than laughter, let's say. And the federations, it was unanimous, no, we want to keep this rule, it helps us plan and it stops our horses from being sold from under us right up to the games. But again, it'll be fully on the table as part of the review of the Olympic regulations in 2026, and we're totally open to either removing it, changing the deadline. That's all up for discussion.
Yeah, that's great, and I fully agree that this rule is good. Nevertheless, when you see, it's like when we have to take the temperature of the horses before the shows. I don't know how many riders really, take the temperature of their horses before the shows. So it's a bit the same here. I think if the rule is to say we want to avoid that and we want to make sure that the horses are at least to a portion to someone of the country, this has to be proven and not just written in the database and sent to the FEI. I don't know how many of the horses that competed in the Olympics were really that they could prove that at least a portion of the horse was to someone of the country, and not just a line in the registry of a national federation. And so because if I take my example, the mare of my daughter is owned by my company, which is a Swiss company, but I hold it for 100%, and I'm from Liechtenstein. I can prove it. So I understand that I didn't do it on the 15th of January, and either way, it would have been much too early for my daughter to participate to that. Nevertheless, these are the type of rules. I understand why they exist and why national federation want them to keep them. Nevertheless, we then will have to see how they will react when we ask for a proof of ownership, even for 1%. Of these horses on the 15th of January from someone of the national, not federation, but at least the nationality of the country. Okay, so yeah, I perfectly agree, and you see, I have one foot on the ground, or perhaps even two, having horses myself and competing and seeing all these in real. And my goal is like yours, is to, you know, I think our sport is at stake. It's I heard that we are now at war at the FEI with what's happening. I think it's too bad that we are now at war. Perhaps we could have prevented this a little bit before. But I agree, we are at war, and Olympics are close to, perhaps Los Angeles might be the last one, if we see how we are attacked by all these networks. And I think we can you know, react to that, but effectively we should also act. And there are many ideas here, but I think it's not the topic today. So very happy to be part of this discussion today, and to listen, and perhaps to give you my returns from the ground itself.
Thank you, Nicolas, but I would like to be more optimistic that we will continue much further after Los Angeles, and I'm sure we will be in the Olympic list, because we have amazing sport and it's in our hands. Everything.
Yeah, may I say that Credit Suisse said this also. They wanted to stay a bank, and unluckily for them, even if, you know, when you see, I'm sorry to make a parallel in between horse jumping and banking, because this has nothing to do, but you can imagine the power of a bank like Credit Suisse. And when you see the results of UBS today, they are great. So they absorbed Credit Suisse, and there was absolutely no problem in the Credit Suisse activities, in fact. But the network were able to, the social network were able to give the final estocade to a large institution like Credit Suisse. And this is why I would like to be as optimistic as you are, but we shouldn't underestimate the power of networks today, and this is very, very critical. And
if I may, just one last thing, because when I said we're at war, I mean, what I was trying to say there as well is that we are all on the same side.
Exactly.
And we need to work together. And we can all, if everyone does what they have to do, the FEI, the national federations, the clubs, I mean, we'll get there. And I believe everybody fell in love with our sport in Paris. That's one thing we all achieved with national federations, the FEI, the organizing, everybody that was involved in this. We achieved the impossible, but we got to keep that, and we have to stand up, and we got to do what's right. So during the FEI General Assembly, which I hope you will be going to, Nicolas, as well, we will be presenting. We will be further presenting the action plan as well. And there's many things that national federations can do also to help in the situation. So no, we need everyone's help. And again, we're all on the same side. We all want the same thing. So, and I am with like Theodore. I'm an optimist. I know we will remain, but we just have to be vigilant, and we have to acknowledge that this is not just a battle. This is something we're here, and it's going to stay for a while, because the scenario has changed radically in the past 10 years. But anyways, that's for another day. Thank you very much, and I already took up too much.
No, thank you so much. I didn't want it to look too pessimistic, and that's not the point. But and I think we have to be realistic. And I agree with you. What happened in Paris was just great. It was the total, reverse of what happened in Tokyo.
Exactly.
Exactly, about new rules and things like that. And I think we have to promote more and more, not only horse jumping, but all what was going on around. And when you see how the care of the horses and everything, what the effort that we're done, I think then it's not only so important to see the horses jumping, but also what all goes around it. And when you see a lot of other sports, they don't only promote the sport act itself, but everything that goes around.
Yes.
Thank you. I shut my mouth now.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. So this was the last item of our agenda. And once again, I would like to be optimistic, but we have to deal with the difficulties which we face and the challenges. And I'm sure together we will do it. FEI, EF, and the national federations, this is our responsibility. Thank you very much for your attendance, and wish you a very nice summer, and hope to see you very soon in person, latest in Tallinn, during the GA. Please send your applications for the GA, because last year we promised to Sabrina that we will have 30 people, 30 national federations which will be presented.
Thank you. And see you guys at the Paralympics, huh?
Thank you.
All
Yes,
right.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye all.